I used to be a herbicide contractor. I worked for SPI, worked for Soper Wheeler Company, I worked for PG&E, worked for GP, LP. My nickname used to be Dr. Death. I figured out how to kill brush with chemicals, chainsaws, and other things. I bought the first goats in 2006, commercial goats in 2006, and went to the woods, unloaded them in May, grazed for 30 days, took a farm advisor with me, and we went to the woods. And we went into a unit that I hadn't seen in 30 days, and we're looking at the brush, and it had about 12 inches of regrowth on it. And Glenn was saying, yeah, look at that, boy, that's all that root energy reserve coming up, and that plant's gonna be really weak. If you came back in about 2 weeks and grazed this, not out of this again, you could probably kill the brush. I had an epiphany that day. It was July the 7th, 2006. I said, Glenn, I wanna figure out how to turn that biomass into food for critters and run more of them. Because we've been looking at all this stuff from a destructive process point of view. Mastication, herbicides, burning. We're trying to get rid of stuff. We're trying to get it away, gone, right? That's how we think we're gonna make the woods safe. It's not how we're gonna make the woods safe. We need to change the form so that what we have is safe. If we could bring critters through here every year and harvest that increment, why are we not thinking about the woods the same way? Why are we still going out and using destructive process? Why are we using tractors that we put fuel in and put men on to go beat the crap out of the woods and then wait 10, 20 years for an oxidative process of destruction and breakdown? You're not using a metabolic action. When we run our sheep and goats across the ground, guess what? They break that stuff down. They pee and poop on it. They put organisms into it. They accelerate the breakdown. But we've taken the animals out of the equation. There were lots and lots and lots of herds of sheep that used to winter in the valley and go up to the high country, following the feed every year and coming out in the fall. And they would light stuff on fire if it got too thick and unusable as forage. And the reason those fires didn't burn us up because they'd taken out all the flashy fuel on their way up in the spring. That's kind of, we talk about big extensive stands and light prescribed fire versus catastrophic fire. One of the key things that's changed is we've taken the animals out. We thought we did it for good reasons. I would say to you that we have the opportunity to go back with things that we have learned in the last 20 years about animal behavior, forage suitability. For instance, manzanita has a high tannin content. We now know that if you can add alkaloids and tannins together, that they neutralize in the gut, and that the animals can actually self-regulate that. A lot of work out of Utah State. Huge body of knowledge. It's like we've got all this stuff, but we don't have a will to put the animals back in. When we try to do it, we come about it with the wrong paradigm. We're trying to use the animals as a destructive process. We're trying to bring them in, pound the crap out of the brush, and leave. And that's not going to work. We can have the best masticators in the world. We can have the best integrated destructive processes in the world, but you're still never going to catch me with my animals. Because my animals, we will actually increase the production, the assimilation of carbon out of the air. Your equation, talking about you want breakdown to be greater than increase? We want increase to be greater, but we want to keep it in the system. Do you want your retirement account to go down between the time you put your money in and you retire? Do you want it to increase? You want it to compound in a usable form and fashion, right? You with me? Example, we talk about shade to try and suppress fuels. To get to shade, you've got your stands so dense that you don't have any sunlight hitting the floor of the forest. What does that do to your fuel behavior, your fire behavior, crown to crown? Open the stand up, let the light, don't hit the ground. What was the commonality in all the masticated pictures? What color was the stuff on the ground? Was it green? It was brown. If all that stuff is green, when the sunlight is striking, what's it hitting? It's not hitting dead brush, it's photosynthesizing. Where are the best solar collectors in the world? Attached to a plant. How are we going to get it from where it's collected to where we want it? Through a ruminant. 10 million acres of private timberland in the state of California. But what are the things that stand in the way? Us. When I started pitching these ideas back in 07, CAL FIRE was lobbying for give us twice as many fire engines and we'll be able to put the fires out. They were spending huge amounts of money to build fuel reduction corridors. They called them fire breaks. Miles and miles of them, 400 feet wide. Somebody gave a talk and said, we're really pleased. We spent all these millions of dollars and we have an 85% success. Somebody said, what's going on the other 15% of the time? High temperature, high winds, or a combination of the two. When do you need your fuel break to work? High temperature. In other words, when you need it, it fails. So the 85% success is a falsity because it's only describing when you don't need it. And we actually talked about that when we took the SPI boss and the foresters out to that site from 06. And we said, imagine if we took that 400-foot wide firefighting equipment protection zone and widened it out to half a mile wide on either side by putting the animals in the understory so that when the fire is coming at it, we can more easily backburn and we can slow down the rate of it. Now we're doing something. This is a very upscale neighborhood in Lincoln called Catavadera. These are custom houses, 5,000-6,000 foot houses, very upscale neighborhood. But look at all the dead wood in there, right? Now, if you got fine flashy fuels and you got a north wind, we got a big problem. But once I take all that fine fuel out, the fire doesn't get to that wood, problem gone. Key ideas. Grazing should not replace anything, but enhance everything. Put them together. If you're gonna masticate, then burn, flush the plants that can then be feed. Don't let them get big enough and to kill them and create more fuel. Put the grazers across, let their foot activity break down, accelerate the breakdown of all of that woody material. Understand the dynamics of the landscape and the herd. Try to do these grazing things. People come up with a little pot of money, you know, $5,000 to $50,000, and they do a little project to try and do something green. Bigger is better. When I started in that previous picture, that's Catavadera next to a place called Sun City, Lincoln Hills. I was persuaded to bring my animals there when I didn't want to go there because I right in people's backyards. I was previously on levees and big conservation lands and away from the urban interface. We unloaded on October 8, 2008, 570 sheep and 70 goats. Basically one semi-load of animals, 1.15 semi-load. 10-day project, 22 acres. On the 7th day, the boss took me aside. He said, go out front and give me a price to keep going. I want you to do the 80 acres out front. Between that date and 2012, we grew the program from 22 acres to 5,000. In 2012, we had 31 semi-loads, 14,500 animals, and 17 sites working on the first day of May. The point being, bigger is better. That map I showed you, all those colors are different ownerships. I had to put those in one by one by one by one. Efficiency is generated by scale. So in your fire-safe communities, you got a small community and you try to do a 20-acre project at the edge of town. It's a great concept and it makes everybody feel good. Why not protect all of them? Why not do it all? Well, right now there's not enough animals and there's not enough appreciation for how to design and implement and put the programs together. It's education. Most of what's required is educating. We've got to get people to think and we've got to get them to stop thinking the way they have been thinking about animals and fuels. Time stability is critical. I've been in that project with that map since 2008, 6 years of my life. It took 4 years to get it up to size. Most of the grazing projects you see are a one-shot deal. You get a set pool of money out of a grant or some cost share mechanism. We expect higher plant output. We actually are producing more carbon forage per acre in these lands in Lincoln and Rockland than in the stale ungrazed, because in the stale ungrazed you have a thatch overburden, just like the masticated sites. Most fuel reduction activities are a destructive process. I call them energy black holes. All the dollars, all the resource going in, what's coming back out? When we graze, we actually take more carbon out of the air, we're actually putting more carbon in the soil and organic matter. Exposure to air oxidizes organic matter. The more you work the soil, you actually reduce your organic matter fraction. If you stop doing that and keep converting from live plant material through the ruminant gut into the ground, you'll actually increase the total carbon going into the ground out of the air. Basic science. There's a real key reason why we don't want to use animals in the destructive process. There's a reason why certain grazing projects cost so much money. We call it the rehabilitative cost. If you bring the animals in and force them to eat stuff that's not good for them, that they don't want to eat, if you take big, strong, healthy animals and pit them against undesirable herbivory, choice of food, we can consume that food down, but that pulls the animal down. When you get the system balanced so that we're matching the feed to the animal needs to the time of year, we try to have lambs on the ground that their mothers are making milk when the feed is green and strong. We try to have them what we call dry when the feed is dry. Right, we try to match that up. The plants want to do a certain thing, the animals want to do a certain thing, and we as humans want certain things to happen. We want certain outcomes. The style we use seeks to balance the three systems to optimize the net result rather than maximize the work. Where we get into trouble is when we try to maximize any one thing. Enhance over time. This is a preserve. Where are the sheep? Are they eating the natives or are they eating the invasive weed? At that time of year, that is the protein, that is the best feed. That's an hour later. I mean, is that classic or what? This is what it would look like if they masticated, right? That domination mentality. Here it is a year later, growing back lush and green. Now, we call this the establishment phase. This was the first year we had a pretty thatchy condition. Medusa head was in there pretty thick. It was struggling, things weren't going well. The biologists report back as part of the conservation easement rules, right? The monitoring rules were saying the thing's going stagnant, we've got a problem. So we opened it up with a sheet. Now we've got a green functional system. This is the following year in the spring when the vernal pools are full, and we graze around through it and we top that feed, and we've come up with a 2-pass system. We start in February, we go through all acres, top it, so that we can keep the growth curve, the sigmoid growth curve down at a more desirable state. We keep the forage at a higher quality so that the sheep do better. Time stability is critical. This, see the house here and the house here. Put them in here real thatchy. In order to keep the animals up and to match the diet, we had to add a little bit of alfalfa. But this is how far we took it down. You go out there at that time of year and drop a match, you don't have a problem. Drop a match there, you've got a big problem. That's right over the hill on the back side of this hill, okay? The point about time stability, it takes time to build a good system, it takes time to figure it out, it's a huge investment. As fire safe councils, you know that. But if you get enough players and you get the system big enough so that the economics work, what do you think our cost was in 2012? In the Bay Area, most grazing jobs are $400 per acre.
50 bucks.
Boom. The two biggest things that affect cost are labor and freight. If you're gonna bring animals in on trucks to do 20 acres in 5 days and then put them back on a truck, you got a huge trucking expense against very little action. The reason we charge for this kind of work, like this and this, you know how we created that differential between grazed and ungrazed? Portable net fence, it doesn't go up by itself. The focused grazing, when you make smaller sets, you have more fences, you have a higher labor function. The better you design your system and the more infrastructure you have, the more water sources that you have, the more people that you have involved, you can get your costs down to where it's affordable. The masses in California can't afford $400 an acre every year to graze. 50 bucks is a whole lot better than 400. Good grazing is a long-term process. Stretch your timeline out. You want to do good grazing, open it up. Good grazing can make fire safety more functional. If you will do what the animals need instead of trying to force the animals to do what you want. Good grazing works. If it's not working, if the grazing isn't working, it's not the critters' fault, it's our fault. We can get there. When the critters are in the shade of your bigger trees, and they're resting and they're disturbing the fuel and they're getting it away, then if you put fire through, they've done your work for you. And oh, by the way, where are they hanging out when they're peeing and pooping? In the root zone of your bigger trees. So they move your energy from your open spaces to your shade just by being there and doing what they do. So what we've seen is we've seen lots of efforts to try and do things, and we get one-time funds and we call it the establishment step, but we haven't yet addressed, because we didn't know, to tell you it's going to take you this much money to do the first part, and you got to expect it's going to take this much money to maintain it. Time stability. So I was just sharing with Niels, and I wrote it down. The new idea is if we were to formulate entities or companies that had long-term agreements where we actually physically describe what's going to happen on the land. We've got all this land mass. It's going to take time and money to develop. But if a person like myself or yourself that has the animals has a long-term agreement with a large institutional landowner, guess what? EQIP can help. But what are you going to spend the money on? What are the programs they allow? Subdividing fences, interior fences. Okay? It costs $250,000 to put fence around a 5,000 acre square. Sounds horrible. 50 bucks an acre. But if you got it for 25 years, you're amortizing that's $2 an acre. Now we're doing something. And then if EQIP comes in and helps you do the subdividing fences to break it down to small, put solar wells, develop your water sources in strategic places so that you water the animals out of the drainages where you don't necessarily want them. Stuff that's kicking our butt. Burning us up. Figure out how to turn it around so that it's working for us instead of killing us. It works. Match the animals to the nature. Yes. The initial projects need to start on the private lands, allowing the public folks to gather the data to put their documents together. Because otherwise you have a circular disconnect in the public arena, which is why we've never done it. Boom. Your NEPA document. Well, give me a NEPA document. Well, I can't because we have to graze. Well, then let me graze. Well, I can't because you don't have a NEPA document. Hello? What's going on with this thing? But I want to help figure out how to have a whole lot of people run animals, because then it gets better for everybody. Let's go eat lunch.
Thanks, guys.